You have built a life. Break time equals 400 months. Why does it hollow you? They scroll past your achievement. Something contracts inside. The pole is not weakness. It is ancient design. The inner citadel. Today we examine the comparison trap that silences. At the inner citadel, midlife is a summons, not crisis. 3 thinkers, 3 centuries, 1 devastating convergence. What if every scroll you take costs you something irreplaceable? Consider what Leon Festinger discovered in 1954 about comparison. This content is educational, not clinical or diagnostic advice. Festinger, social comparison is biological, not a character flaw. We compare to calibrate our standing in the group. After 45, this drive intensifies. Research confirms this clearly. The scoreboard feels permanent. Time shortens. Comparison sharpens. We will return to what Festinger missed about this mechanism. Carl Jung worked a different territory. His maps were interior. In 1921, he described what he called the inferior function. Your dominant strength casts an equal shadow opposite. That shadow is your inferior function. It waits. Building a career suppresses certain qualities. That is the cost. At midlife, the suppressed qualities demand recognition. They surge. What you envy names precisely what you denied yourself. We will show what this means in practice now. Epictetus enters now, a Roman slave who owned nothing. He identified what he named prohairesis, your judgment. This faculty is always yours. Nothing external reaches it. His insight was surgical. What is yours, what not? Social comparison operates entirely in what lies outside prohairesis. All 3 thinkers are pointing at the same interior mechanism. You have already sensed what we're about to name. What follows is the convergence that changes everything. Value loop 1. What Festinger's theory actually demonstrates. Social comparison peaks twice, adolescence and midlife before retirement. The scoreboard feels like it is about to become permanent. Upward comparison looking above you produces most pain. A 2025 systematic review confirmed this across 11 neuroimaging studies. Social media triggers the same brain circuits as addiction disorders. Ventral striatum, amygdala. The reward and threat systems both activate. You are not weak for feeling this. You are normal. Festinger observed, we seek similar others as reference points. But social media delivers only the highlight reel always. The result, you compare your interior to their curated exterior. This is categorically an unfair comparison. Festinger would agree. And yet, the poll continues, because the mechanism runs deeper. Value loop 2, Jung on the midlife inferior function. Every functional type has a dominant and suppressed mode. Jung studied these patterns across hundreds of analyses over decades. The dominant function serves you in building career, identity, success. What if achievements obscure what you need to become? Jung wrote this at 67, not theory, confession. If this work resonates, stay with this channel. The inferior function surfaces in midlife with unusual destabilizing force. Suddenly, the analytical executive craves silence, creativity, connection. The social professional suddenly hungers for solitary depth and mastery. What you envy in them is what you starved. This is not psychology trivia. It is a compass. A person we will call Margaret was 47 in 2024. Every LinkedIn notification triggered something she could not name. She believed she compared careers. Jung would know otherwise. She was comparing the life chosen against the one foreclosed. The comparison was never about her colleague. It never is. When Margaret stopped defending and listened to the ache, she discovered what her inferior function had been asking. Creativity, solitude. The work of her hands, not title. The comparison trap had been a map, misread as wound. Value Loop 3. Epictetus and the prohairesis test. Epictetus divided all things into two, ours and not ours. Their achievements, their praise, their social media metrics, not ours. Our judgment, our response, our interior orientation. Always ours. The Stoic correction is not indifference. It is radical reorientation. What you are about to encounter changes everything you know. The reversal, comparison, is not the problem. Misreading it is. Social comparison reveals exactly what your inferior function is requesting. The ache is not an accusation. It is a compass. Festinger mapped the mechanism. He did not map the meaning. Epictetus built the exit. He had no neuroscience available. Epictetus built the exit without neuroscience to explain it. Together, they formed something none of them achieved alone. The convergence thesis. All three identified the same inner event. Biological comparison drive amplified by inferior function pressure. Directed outward by social media. Resolved only by prohairesis. You have felt this. You know the shape precisely. A quiet Tuesday, a notification, something contracts for a moment. You scroll past their achievement and feel the wrongness. That contraction is not envy. Your inferior function is speaking. It is not about them. It was never about them. A 2018 Journal of Social Psychology study confirmed findings. Adults over 45 who practiced deliberate comparison interruption reported relief. Not because circumstances changed, because their faculty of judgment shifted. What we found tracing this across 3 centuries, striking. The comparison trap is where your freedom actually lives. Festinger said, "We compare to calibrate." Yes, calibrate what? Our standing in the group is one answer. Stoics differ. Epictetus would say, calibrate your prohairesis, not your social rank. Jung would add, calibrate your relation to your inferior function. The comparison reveals which quality you have been denying expression. That quality is where the exit is, hidden in wound. We must be honest about what this cannot promise you. Festinger's 1954 theory preceded modern neuroscience. Gaps remain. Jung's typology faces critiques from contemporary personality research. We offer this synthesis as useful navigation, not settled science. We offer this synthesis as useful navigation, not science. A map for territory that has long lacked one. We also note, this is not professional support. That distinction matters, illuminating pain versus destabilizing pain. That too is the inferior function in your blind spot. The trap is most powerful when you believe yourself immune. The question is whether comparison reveals values or distorts them. Does comparison reveal your values or distort them instead? Does comparison reveal your values or merely distort them? And that question leads to the practice Stoics actually prescribed, not philosophy's theory. Philosophy is daily instrument of judgment. Step 1. Name the comparison precisely, not in general terms. Not their success versus failure, their quality versus your longing. Specificity disrupts the automatic upward comparison. Festinger found this directly. Comparing their whole life against yours is the trap. Step 2. Apply the prohairesis test immediately and honestly. Does this involve your judgment, choice, and response today? Or does it involve their rank, praise, and resources? If outside Epictetus was clear, release it immediately and fully. Not because it does not matter, but it costs everything. Step 3. Read what the comparison is actually telling you. Jung's inferior function insight applies directly here. Follow the ache. The comparison ache is information about you, not them. Timothy Wilson at University of Virginia demonstrated this in Redirect. Rewriting the underlying story changes the emotional weight of comparison. You do not erase the comparison, you read it correctly. The 3 steps: name precisely, test prohairesis, read the signal. This practice has 3 movements, not one vague aspiration. We have explored this practice at this desk for years. It does not remove the trigger, it changes your relation. The biological drive remains. The meaning you assign shifts. Social media weaponized a drive that already existed within. The practice creates the gap between stimulus and your response. In that gap, Epictetus wrote, lives every human freedom. He wrote this from a Roman prison cell, not comfort. Festinger and Jung from the 20th century confirmed it independently. The comparison trap is not your failure, a misread message. The message, read correctly, names your unlived life with precision. Not as accusation, as invitation, as summons toward what foreclosed. The inferior function is not your weakness, it is depth. Prohairesis is not indifference. It is freedom to choose response. Social comparison is not vanity. It is calibration gone digital. Reframe all 3 and the trap becomes a navigational instrument. 3 thinkers, 3 centuries, 1 map for this particular territory. The territory where midlife comparison and self-betrayal finally meet. We covered the first half of the Stoic practice here. The full protocol, all 7 stages, goes far deeper. The comparison trap is where your summons is hidden. Answer. If this resonates with what you have been carrying, stay. Full breakdown pinned in the comments.